Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Karen Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Karen Pulver.
Carol Gino, RN, MA, has been a nurse, author, and teacher for many years. She has worked in all areas of nursing, including emergency room, intensive care, the burn unit, medicine, surgery, pediatrics, pediatric intensive care, and hospice care for the terminally ill. Currently, through coaching one-on-one with individual clients, her master's in transpersonal studies allows her to focus on new modalities for healing, changes in consciousness, and cross-cultural healing. Carol is the author or co-author of over 8 books, including Los Angeles Times and New York Times bestsellers. She also created several products and online programs for nurses, writers, and those seeking their higher guidance. Carol is the founder of Soul Star Academy, where soul development meets the art of storytelling. She also has courses in the carpentry of writing as taught to her by Mario Puzo, author of The Godfather, with whom she had a long-term relationship until he died in 1999. They learned all about life, love, power, and writing from each other. Carol has been keynote speaker at several events and continues to spread her soul wisdom on podcasts, radio shows, summits, workshops, virtual classes, and more. Thank you so much, Carol, for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
So good to have you here today on Grateful Goddesses. We have so much to talk about. Let's just start with your journey when you were younger. Tell us about your dreams and your vision, your passions when you were younger.
Okay. You ready for this? Because it's going to sound so dopey that any woman in the world, or any man in the world actually, but even any woman in the world will know that it's all planned out beforehand, man, because I was so dopey. Well, I was brought up an Italian kid, okay, and I wanted to be a saint, because if there was Fatima and if there was Lourdes and there were little kids seeing visions, I wanted to have a vision. I was very competitive in that. And I used to pray every night desperately to have a vision, and my sister used to kneel right next to me and pray not to have a vision when I had mine. Okay. So I don't know, I was like impassioned with this. After a while, I used to pray every night to be a saint. And after a while, I figured I didn't hear anything, so maybe I'd settle for being a nun. And after a while, I said to God, listen, if you've got too many nuns as wives, I'd like to be a lawyer. And that's what I decided. I don't know how I made that jump, but my father spent his life and mine from the time I was 4 years old reading me the Harvard classics. So I knew about Aristotle before I knew anything else. And then I guess I would say I was caught somewhere between the Harvard classics and Disney, because in order to get out of the house, I had to get married, because Italians don't let you go for sleepovers and stuff, or didn't at the time. Okay, so I got married when I was about just before I was 18. And then 3 months later, I got pregnant, so I had a baby by the time I was just 18 or more, a little bit. But my husband had a drinking problem, and I had no clue, because I didn't know there was such things. Okay. And so one day we were up at a little house that he had rented in Pennsylvania, and what happened is he went out to bring the diapers to the laundromat and go grocery shopping, and he never came back. So I was up in the house with 2 little kids, no food, no phone, no car, nothing, and no way to, I didn't know what I was going to do. And suddenly the house was filled with smoke, and the furnace downstairs was going out. It was freezing up there. And I thought, oh my God, my parents will kill me if my kids freeze to death. I was caught between the daughter and the mother. And so I had to throw books in and I broke furniture and I had to walk over mice and rats and everything to get this furnace started because I had never seen one before. But I got it going again. And I went upstairs and was praying and laying down on the couch and saying, God, you got to do something here, you know. And suddenly I looked across the room and I saw this woman with pearls and a cape and walking up and down along my baseboard, and they would see me hands reaching out at her. And I thought, who is this? And then I poked myself in the eye. I thought, all right, maybe I'm. And what happened was I wasn't dreaming, and I didn't understand why I, who was scared shitless of everything, was not afraid of this woman or how she got in the house. The next morning I woke up with an absolute certainty that I had to be a nurse. There was nothing in my life, even so far, that has matched my passion for nursing. As a nurse for 30 years, I loved when I walked in for the first time into a hospital after I practically begged, borrowed, and stole to get in to a nursing program for aid to dependent children. I walked into a hospital, I looked around and the sun was setting or rising, and I looked and I thought, we're going to save people, we're going to do big things. And I looked back and I thought, I'll never be this happy again. Somebody should have turned me into salt, but they didn't. 3 years, now 3.5 months after I was in nursing school, I saw the woman in a nursing history book, and it was Florence Nightingale. At that time, I didn't know. And that was, as I said, my biggest passion. But you know, the thing about nursing that nobody understands is that when people talk about your shadow side, they always talk about stuff that looks dark. Nurses walk in shadowlands because they face death, disease, fragility, all of that stuff all the time. So their shadow is their joy. So it took me a very long time after holding babies who had died on me and everything like that, because I loved every one of them. In fact, the first thing I said to my daughter when Gregory died, my grandson died, was, shit, I guess I'm not full of shit because I don't feel any worse now than I did when all those other babies died when I was holding them and stuff. And she said to me, Mom, you think you should be telling that to his mother? And I thought, oh no, another moment of terrific sensitivity on my part, you know. But what happened is that led me into nursing. Nursing, when I couldn't save everybody or help everybody, when there were so many problems that nobody was applying themselves to, I thought I have to write. I have to write to tell everybody what's going on so that they can save themselves with information or holding information back. So I went to New School for Social Research. I was sitting between two old ladies one night who were no DNR, don't bring them back, you know, just let them die. So I was sitting down holding both their hands and trying to read a book I remember at that called The Mixed Blessing. And something wrote across the book in light. It was like, and I kept looking at it and I thought, oh, for real, I'm crazy. I really must be. And I went to a shrink, a young shrink, and I said to her, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm such a mess. I'm burned out in nursing. I've got to do something. And she said, do you need something other than something writing the pages of a book to tell you what you should be doing? And I thought, oh, okay. So that's when I signed up for New School of Social Research. And I took a course at Hofstra. And as Alicia would say, with synchronicity, irony, what happened is next. After 5 of my parents had died in a row, I got a call from the agency saying, there's this author who wants one of their own to take care of his wife who's dying. And I thought, one of their own? And I said, I can't, I'm mourning, I'm grieving, I'm in bed, leave me alone. She said, you have to, they won't accept anybody else. So I said, okay, what's her name? And they said, Erica. I said, Erica what? And they said, Erica Puzo. And I said, for an Italian? And they said, no, she married him. So she must love Italians, so you have to go take care of her. So she made me feel like it was family. So that's how that happened. And once I took care of Erica, oh, I loved her. Once I took care of her, It was about 3 months. And I admired Mario really much more as a father and a husband and as the writer as the Godfather, because I thought, oh no, not an Italian lunatic macho. I'm going to have to kill him. But he was really a very, very good man. And he was a wonderful, he stayed with her every moment and stuff like that. And so when she was asleep, because he would stay all the time, we would do some talking. And once, it was like in the last month she was alive, he said to me, you know, you should write a book about what nurses do. Because when doctors can't do anything, it's really the nurses who save the families. And so I said, okay, will you teach me? And he said, you can't teach writing, it has to be learned. And I said, well, I'm a quick study, will you give me a shot? And he said, well, let me see something you wrote. So I went home, got some stuff, threw it on the desk. He looked at it and he said, okay, you have talent, we can try. He said, but I never want anybody I love to be a writer. It's too tough a job. And I said, are you kidding? I'm a nurse. If there are such thing as soulmates, man, we were maybe even twin souls, because we just were what each other wasn't. I can't explain, but it was sort of like he was a crazy hedonist because he loved overeating and he loved gambling and he loved having fun. And I had so long in the Shadowlands that anytime that happened, anytime any kind of fun came up for me, I would think there's all those people suffering. How could I be having fun? How could, and I had that terrible guilt thing until Mario said to me one day, Carol, he said, if your suffering could remove the suffering for other people, then it would be wise. He says, but there are a lot of people who are looking for a smile of somebody who's unburdened, help them life be a little easier. He said, because people need to have hope. And he was maybe the smartest man I ever met. And I'm not saying that because I loved him, because I haunted the hell out of him. But it was really because he was able to take very complicated subjects and make them simple. Like, he had none of the beliefs I had. And yet, he said to me, and yet, you're one of the most competent people I know, if not the most competent, so your belief system works for you. And I said, but what if it's true? I've built my life on one thing, and therefore I couldn't switch at this particular time, you know? And that's how a lot of our negotiations went. But he was the one who taught me about the difference between women's power and men's power, and swore that women should never try to be like men because they were already better. So that was, it was just, I don't know, he was smart, but in a clever, smart way only. You know, really, he was maybe the goodest man I ever met also. And I don't mean best, I mean, because he saw the good in everybody, he really did. You know.
So Carol, I don't want to interrupt there, but I want to circle back to when you became a nurse, and Alyssa wants to ask a little bit more about that.
Let's go back to the beginning of the story a little bit, and when you decided to become a nurse. And I wonder, you know, it seems like it was that moment when you were in this home, you had these two young children, and you saw an angel, and you didn't learn later that was Florence Nightingale.
Yes, I learned.
But somehow that sparked something in you, and you sort of had this revelation to become a nurse. And I'm just curious, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about that.
Alyssa, all I can tell you is the weirdest thing, because in school, I used to even tease the girls about who wanted to be nurses. I had a grandmother who was a nurse, midwife, carried a gun, drove a car. And she died when I was 7 years old, and I was really close to her. But that was never a path I ever thought of following. And yet, as I remember back as you asked that question, like my father always used to say, you come from a long line of pioneer women, deserve it. You know, and so my father and I, he sort of brought me up gender neutral. You know, he always said he loved girls, but he treated me, I mean, he taught me how to hunt and clean animals and all that stuff. And he said, you can do anything anybody else can do if you want it badly enough. I didn't find out till way later that that wasn't necessarily true. But I woke up in the morning with complete certainty. It wasn't a decision, Alyssa. It wasn't something. I woke up and I knew there was nothing else I could do but that. And I went running down to the welfare offices to get into a program, and they said it was full. And then I said to the guy, if I get a 98 on my test, don't you need people to succeed in these things? And they said yes. And I said, well, if I get a 98 on he said, have you ever worked in a hospital? I said, no. I said, if I get a 98 and if I get a job at a hospital before this starts in 3 months, can I then be a nurse? And he said, nobody can do that. I said, can I? And he said, if you get a 98 and you get a job, yes. I said, oh, good. And I jumped up and I kissed him. I mean, the poor man probably thought I was a lunatic. Then I went to the church and I said to the priest, I said, listen, I went to Catholic school. I've been here 1,000 years. You got to get me a job at Good Samaritan as an aide. I've got to have this job. And I gave him the whole speech, you know. You can imagine I couldn't have tweeted it to him. I said, you know. So I said, my children, I mean, I'm sure I painted my children with swollen bellies at that point, you know, and the whole bit. But they let me in to a Title V program for LPNs, for mothers of dependent children. And that's where my whole life started.
You mentioned, though, about seeing the angel. And Alicia, who's joining us, and she has her own podcast called That's Myrony, she has spoken too, I believe, with angels. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong. I personally haven't. I want to. I really ask for it every night before I go to bed. Maybe I'm trying too hard, but Alicia, I'm sure, can relate, but has some questions about that too.
Well, yeah, I can relate because, you know, I had a spiritual experience that I can't explain. It happened 6 years ago. And when it happens, you can't deny it. And when it becomes a part of you. And, you know, like I know you have, I mean, Carol, you and I have become friends. So we've had such in-depth conversations about your angel guide, Janet, and all your other angels. I mean, it's so incredible because I'm sure you're going to go into this about, you know, how many near-death experiences you've had. But it seems like every time you've had something, you became more and more, I don't like, I mean, it's hard to say the word enlightened because people can take that a little bit differently, but it really is a level of enlightenment because you're getting closer and closer as, I mean, I love to say God, and I say God is love with an awesome sense of humor. And so like when you first felt that angel, when Florence Nightingale, when did you start seeing more of your angels?
I think what happened, Alicia, is that when I was growing up, I used to get, I would think they were impressions or whatever. I had friends in and out of body, like imaginary friends, and you should keep all your imaginary friends because they grow up into guides, which are really cool. And mine are very funny. So, and about what you said, Alicia, I have had several, you know, enlightenment may just be God seeing life through our eyes because we are the fragments of God, if you will, that he plays with down here, you know. That's really the fall from the one to earth. But this will tickle, you know, hopefully it will tickle all of you because it's the honest to God's truth. I mean, once, I think maybe Karen knows this, I can't remember, but at Mario's house one night, got up, one of the angels poked me, and I got up to go to the bathroom, and there was a 6-foot burglar, masked burglar, standing in the doorway. And I said, what the hell are you doing in that outfit? I mean, it was such a thing, you know, and but they protect in so many ways. But listen, the other day, what happened is I was doing a meditation in the morning. No reason to believe it would be different from any other morning. And I was doing a regular meditation. And if somebody would have said this to me even 6 months ago, I would have said, oh God, how cliche. How could I even believe this? This is like so woo, you know, because I like practical woo woo. I don't so much like just woo woo, you know. And I'm meditating, and suddenly I know I have I wonder if it's right here. There's a picture that I know I've shown Alicia and stuff, but see this picture? Well, this is the lesser I, and this is the greater I. This is the body, this is God up here, okay? What happened is I'm meditating, and somehow I see these two gold guys. I call them gold guys. They look like Oscar, well, when you get it, but they have things on or something. And they're probably what we would call ETs. But when I asked the angels about them, the angel said, I said, what about extraterrestrials? And the angel says to me, they're not extra, they're just the right amount. And since what's happened is that science has proven that everything is energy, and I can tell you my own experience that, but there are more subtle energies that intersect in our space. We can't see them sometimes, and like Karen, you said, you asked your angel, you know, like people have different accents, and if they call you on the phone, you recognize them, but angels come up as, they come up as color, they come up as sound, they come up as smell. There are different kinds of angels. There are protection angels.
Well, I get a lot of signs. I do get a lot of signs.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. Birds, and I know Alyssa too. She sees a cardinal outside her window, and that she feels like that's her father. We all have signs, but
yeah,
not actual visions.
Yeah, but angels don't always come as we imagine them. I mean, I've got one angel who, she dresses however I wanted to dress. And in the moment, she came one time to sit at a table with me with a business suit on. And I said, what the hell are you doing in that getup? And she said, I figured it would be better if we sat at the table as colleagues rather than you looking up all the time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, she said, because she said, you know, you are my avatar. But she says I said, I'm your avatar? She said, well, you're in physical. She said, I'm not in physical, so anything I need to do on earth has to be done through you. Unless Eva, who's my healing angel, unless Eva wishes to do something. But Roshana's my joy and creativity one. She's the one who makes up my stories. And it's amazing because she shows them to me like a movie. And then I just have to write them, you know?
Well, this is why Grateful Goddesses for me has been such a journey, because when you say woo woo, you know, people might be listening like, what is this? This sounds crazy, honestly.
Yeah.
But if you're open to it, and like you said, there's sounds or smells, or Rachel, what do you think about all this? I know Rachel has done a lot of soul work, so I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
And I've actually talked with Carol too, and she has enlightened me as well. And I, 3 years ago, I didn't believe in past lives. I didn't even really have much of a thought of it. And just to me, it feels like if your soul is on a journey and you're on a journey to learn, and you're to learn from, all of your mistakes, and you're moving and in your next life, you take what you've learned in this life, and then you have other challenges. Like, doesn't it make life so much more interesting to know that you're kind of always learning? And Carol, you reached out to me saying, I have information for you. And I was like, oh my God, who wouldn't want to know more about themselves? Like, thank you. Because I don't hear what you hear. Yeah. I'm like Karen. I'm like, I feel like I'm waiting for this moment to like figure out what my superpower is. Well, and I'm like, it's not coming to me yet.
It just keeps going on. Like right now, enlightenment, Alicia, for me right now is being really human, because our human stories are so important now, because they're going to start augmenting us with perfection, and we're going to be getting more and more AI and AR, and this is our special time. So I guess somebody asked me the other day, what is it that I love most about, by the way, I would not believe anything I heard from me if I wasn't me. Because I was terribly rational unless they.
No, but we're being open here. That's what this is about. Like, we want to learn and we want to know. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that we're going to take on in our life.
Right.
Some of us might. That's what it's about. Like, every episode we're learning something new. Some we've taken on and tried, some we just, have learned about and just decided not to.
Well, that's what, Karen, that's exactly what I was thinking. There's a guy who runs a 4-minute mile. I would never do that,
Right.
but I'd like humanity to know what I've been able to experience, because I got a great antenna for whatever reason. And now that it's an evolutionary reset, and that they're going to start, the universe is starting to grow some of our brain. We only use 20% of our brain. 80% of our brain is uncharted territory. And as we start, hearing and sensing different things. If you're blind, you hear better. If every sense you lose, you gain something. And so I've spent so much time on inner space that, like I said, I have friends in and out of body. I don't always listen to what they have to say, but like the other day, like I was starting to say to Alicia, the other day when I was meditating, suddenly I don't know how it happened, but I was going up here, up, up, up. I turned very mercurial, like gold, like them, and I started to ascend here. When I got to the top and broke through, it was, and I went from the I to the I am, and I knew it was God, but I thought, this is cliche, it was love. It was, I don't know what you'd want to call it, it was love. And they were saying to me, you see, God, love, it's not a verb, it's a place. You have to be it. Your personality can do what your personality does. Your essential self is love, is God.
I see Michelle smiling, and I want to bring her in this conversation because I know that she's worked really hard on herself and love this past year or longer, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. And hi, Carol. It's so nice to meet you for the first time. I'm very excited. First of all, I'm having a when Harry met Sally moment, and I'm thinking to myself, I want to meditate like she's meditating.
No, you don't. It takes a long time to get there.
But I very much believe in that love feeling, and I've never, I would love to also have an angel. I mean, I think I know I have recently, but they've come in a different form, but I'm just, I'm in awe, and I do have signs, but my signs are more, I think, intuitive, like it's my own intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I call that my angel or my higher power. Mm-hmm. What's your thought on that?
I think that's true. I think it's absolutely true. I think that's how in fact, I usually can tell if somebody is really sick. I can tell right away if they are not going to get well, whatever that means, because I get this pain in my stomach that there's no way to ignore it, and stuff. At the beginning, when I first used to hear, like you say, signs or messages or whatever, I remember one of the first times, because this is so funny and apparent and stuff like that now when I look back, but I was going to a reader to find out what I was going to be when I grew up, I was a nurse for a couple of years. My kids had survived with me even. And what happened was I was going to see this reader that somebody suggested. And I asked my spirits about it. I said, hey guys, I used to call them at the time. I said, what about this guy? And suddenly I started seeing swastikas all over the place. And I said, Nazi? He's not a Nazi. I did research on him. He worked for the underground and everything like that. I finally ignored them, took a 2-hour ride up to Albany from Long Island to get this guy because he was so good. I got in there. He looked at me and he said, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. So on the way home, he couldn't do a thing. On the way home, I was hollering at them while I was driving, and I'm saying, you made me take this whole ride for what? I said, and what's all this Nazi stuff? And they said, not Nazi, Notsee.
Oh,
So,
Wow.
so what I'm saying is they talk a lot in symbols, and you have to learn to, I spend a lot of time learning translation with them
That's so
because they can only give us whatever signs they think we can interpret. And they think we're very funny. And as we misinterpret them, you know, I swear to God, we're their Saturday Night Live.
I have to tell you, this is crazy, although I don't think you'll think I'm crazy. I keep getting a ringing in my right ear during this interview.
Mm-hmm.
Girls, have I ever had anything like this happen? It's bothering me so much that I'm holding my hand to my ear. I know Alicia's
Why
swinging.
don't you just, can you edit this later? Just close your eyes for a second and ask what it has to say.
I don't have to edit it. Maybe people want to know. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, do it.
Okay. I just feel yellow and sunshine.
Perfect. Yellow is high
Oh.
spirit knowledge.
Really?
What yellow is. It's high spirit knowledge. And what was the other color?
No, just sunshine, just yellow and sunshine.
Okay. Well, that's cool, but yellow is high spirit knowledge is what it is. So
when you get something like that happen, because I often get ringing, like not during interviews though, like, you know, we hear things.
Right.
It's important to stop and go inward and ask.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the time to do
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears now, unless someone else has any other questions related to this topic. I want to make sure that we get it all answered.
I love this, what you put, that he wrote you, anything I can do, you can do better, love Mario, was just the most beautiful. Like, I love the soulmate relationship you had. And, you know, and that's one of the things that, you know, hope listeners understand. We have many different types of soulmates, you know, and we have many different love soulmates, and we can have those, like, really, like, he obviously had a beautiful soulmate relationship with his wife.
Oh, yes.
And then, you know, like, I mean, that was also divinely guided. And so I just wanted to say, oh my God, when I read that, I thought that was so beautiful.
Yes, and I'll tell you something else. When he was dying, I said to him, hey, do me a favor, please do me a favor. Tell me, what am I going to do for guidance when you're not around, when you have nothing to tell me? Tell me the 2 most important things that I need to remember as I go forward without you, you know? Because I had said to him, will you come back and tell me if there's something after and you get wind up there? And he said, no. And I said, why? And he said, because it'll ruin the surprise. But I want you to know, girls, I'm saying this right out loud. Something must be coming up soon, because last week or the week before, I had a very clear, in fact, I thought it was real. This is, you know, takes a while to discern these things. Somebody delivered me in my vision or whatever, his golden typewriter. So, and right after that, all kinds of stuff has been happening. So I know they're readying me to take another step. But the 2 things he said to me was, what I've learned in my life is, if you have a choice, never harm anybody. And he said, and for you, Carol, what I want you to know is that men are as simple as you think they're to be. He says, don't expect men to be women. He said, because if you ask a man what he's thinking and he says nothing, he's thinking nothing. If you ask a woman what she's thinking, she's plotting. So he says, watch your expectations, he said. But he really was, he was good, good. Yeah.
Your romance really sounds beautiful. And I told you the other day we were talking, and I said, I'm probably the only one on the planet that's never seen The Godfather.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's his
Well, I'll tell you why, though. What'd you say? It's a what?
It's his shadow. Let me tell you, he paid with that. Every time he started to write a book, he would have nightmares for the next 3 years. I mean, I said to him, man, you should be writing comedies. This is ridiculous.
Right. Well, that's what happened. I just heard such talk about, and now I have to watch it. I mean, that's probably the ringing in my ears is him saying, watch it already. But I was too scared. And you write about the funny things that when you go into restaurants, people would think that he was actually that mobster kind of guy.
Yeah. When we went to do research for the Sicilian, he said to me and the guide, walk behind me. And he says, Carol, act like a tourist, stay with Joseph. And he walked through the town with this big cigar in his mouth. And every time he passed somebody, he'd just nod. And they'd all put their heads down like this, in this town and stuff like that. And I think, oh my God, this is so hokey. Because the fact of the matter is, Mario didn't even speak Italian, and neither did I. So here we were in Rome. The embassy came to get us. And this is how they talked. They said, we've been notified by people who know that they don't want you doing this story. And so Mario said, okay. And so they said, so if you ever need us to accompany you, please let us know. And Mario said, yes, of course. No, don't be silly. They made us, we stayed at the best hotel. They absolutely closed everything down. It was us in the dining room with a piano playing. When I think of some of this stuff, it was so crazy. And what happened was, we came out of the Roman embassy, and he says to Joseph, Mario says to Joseph, okay, take us to Montelepre. I said, they just told us there were people waiting. He said, yeah, I know. He says, but we'll be in and out before they know it. And I wrote about that in the Me and Mario, and you could see, because I even had to climb over one of the cemetery fences, because this is how Italians are. They had this big sign that said, we were once as you are, you will be as we are. That was on the outside, and it was locked, and we needed pictures. So, but everything about, I would say that I never heard Mario ever say anything bad about anybody, but he was gentle. That's what I would say. He was good, and he was gentle, and he was truthful. Because like I said to him one time, promise me you'll never keep a secret from me. And he said, no, I can't promise you that. And I said, why not? And he said, because if that secret involves somebody else, I would have to betray them, not to betray you. So I can't do that.
That's such a good way of looking at it too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And
really
everything he said made sense. That's how we managed to stay together for 21 years. When both my marriages didn't last more than 4 years.
But now you wanted to marry him, or he?
No, what I wanted was, and everybody should come up with something for this. Every time we went someplace, he'd introduce me as his girlfriend, and when we first went to Cannes, where all those movie people were, and he said, this is my girlfriend, Carol, when we first met. I said, oh, don't do that. I'm too old to be your girlfriend. I think I was 34. And he said, all right. I said, try something else. He said, okay. Next person who came over, he said, this is my paramour. And I said, oh, that's even worse. Don't do that. And so he said, okay. Next person who came over, he said, this is my main squeeze. I said, I gotta kill you. I cannot do this. And he said to me, you cannot blame me for the language in the culture. And I said to him, well, I am. You're a wordsmith. You should have come up with something. And I said, what about partner? And he said, no partner. I'm a writer, and I don't collaborate till after I'm dead. So I said, damn, just like that. And we're riding down the a fleur de lis, the whole thing, and it's beautiful, and flowers are out and everything. And he says to me, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Are you going to be a pain in the ass for this whole trip, or is this going to pass?" So I thought, oh, okay, all right. I can't blame him.
But did you want to marry him?
I wanted to marry him because when we were overseas and I needed medical, we didn't have any medical proxy then. And I would have to
The more
wait
for the
15
arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is what he said to me. He said to me, "Carol, if you wanted to be married, we'd be married." He said, "Do you want my name?" And I said, "No. Why would I want your name? I want my name." He said, "Do you want to come over and you want to make my dinner every night and fix my bed and do all?" He said, "Because I'm an old Italian, that's what it means to me." I said, "No, I don't want to do that." He said, "Do you want to come over on Friday afternoons when the boys are over playing cards with me and, serve us snacks and everything?" I said, "Jesus, no." He said, "What about the Super Bowl?" I said, "You're out of your mind." He said, "Do you want to live with me?" I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, then what's in it for me?" He said, "You're a girl who's big on justice. What's in it for me?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that's true. That's true." He said, "Besides, I thought you wanted to be an effing writer."
Well, that was actually what I wanted to ask you next. If anyone has any questions, by the way, just jump in too.
I have a question,
yeah.
Carol. Actually, you mentioned, I mean, it sounds like your soulmates and such an amazing love story, but earlier you mentioned that you had totally different belief systems.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you more about that.
I think he was, I think as he was growing up, his father, I think now he probably had diabetes or something, but his father went nuts. And as a little kid, he was really afraid, and his mother had to have his father locked up and stuff like that. But he went nuts in a way that he was very evangelical. So Mario was very anti-religious of any kind, so he had a belief in the goodness of humanity, that he believed that basically people were good and did bad things, but he didn't give his power over to any other. In fact, I said to him one time when we were wheeling him in for a heart surgery or something, I said to him, "Hey, if you have a near-death experience, would you tell me what it was?" And he said, "Okay." So as they wheel him back out again afterwards, and I said to him, Mario, did you have it?" And he said, "I did." And I said, "What was it?" He said, "It was a mountain of mashed potatoes with chipped beef and gravy all over it, coming out of the sky like black swallows." I said, "You're a lunatic." I said, "That's not heaven." He said, "It's my idea of heaven."
It's heaven. Yeah, absolutely. With a nice bottle of red wine.
Yeah, I don't, it was just, it was, you know what it was? It was, I had never had a relationship that was easy. I'd never had a relationship that made me more. The men I was married to before that were good men, but they didn't have enough personal power. And so me trying to make myself better, me always competing to be better myself, got misinterpreted as me competing with them. And so they were always thinking I didn't like them, or I was fighting with them, or I'm not saying I'm not a witch when I'm a witch, I mean, because I can be. But I wasn't most of the time with Mario, because I told you some of his tricks, like I'd say something and he'd misinterpret it or something, and I'd have a fit, and he'd say, "Don't holler, you give me a heart attack." I said, "Don't pull that emotional bullshit on me." And he said, "No, I'm serious. I really feel pain." He said, "So please tell it to me again in another way, because sometimes people can't hear things in one way, but they can hear them in another way." So I'd repeat it, and he'd look really sincere, and he'd say, "I think you're getting closer, because I heard more this time than I did last time." And then he'd ask me to repeat it again. By the time I got to the 6th time, I couldn't even remember what I was mad about. I was laughing at him and he was laughing at me. And he said, "So what is the problem then?" I said, "The problem is when you don't answer, I feel invisible. I would rather have you disagree." than not answer, because otherwise I feel invisible. And so we work things out like that, you know. And it wasn't that we didn't have shadow, both of us, because one time we were fighting about something, and he was always very like that. And so I said to him, you know what, in the middle of this fight one time, I said, you know what, the flip side of your humility is arrogance. And I went into the bathroom to slam the door. And he stood outside the bathroom and he said, hon, he said, you know what, the flip side of your arrogance is just more arrogance. And I remember laughing, because I thought to myself, neither of us ever had to back down. And one win was a win for both of us. Because when he was really awful, and I would go on this diatribe of telling him all the things he did to hurt my feelings or whatever, he would just look at me at the end of it and he would say, well, my dear, you are worthy of me. So,
Michelle, did you have a question? It looked like you were responding.
Yeah, so first of all, I've read The Godfather at least twice, and I would say, and I've known this for years, it's likely my favorite book of all time.
He was so thrilled, Michelle, he was so thrilled that women liked that book, and he fought so hard with Francis Coppola in the movie about any of the things that were bad for women. I mean, I was with him a lot of the times after that, you know.
And it's interesting, a couple things. It's interesting to me that he wrote about such darkness, but he was like, it's like almost like, because we all have a balance and we have each side in us. And it's almost like he wanted to get out. That's how he got out that side of him, because you describe him as such a good man and wanting to do good. So I find that pretty fascinating. And also, just off the cuff, when you said wordsmith, the split second you said it, it was in my head. I don't know why I'm even mentioning it, but I find that wild. Mm-hmm. But really, I want to know, like, what was his reference for writing The Godfather? I mean, it wasn't his world as you described. So how did he know so much?
He said, this is what he said. He said it was a family story. He said it was an Olympian myth, Carol. He says it was the Titans, the Olympians. He said, and what I did, he researched. And I mean, I have boxes of his researches on like the Valachi papers and all that other stuff. I have all his old mafia research books and stuff. But what he said is that it is much more difficult to make goodness exciting. He said it takes a writer with real skill. He said, skills I don't have. He said, but he always wanted to be a literary man, and he wrote a book called The Fortunate Pilgrim about his mom, which is close to an autobiography, but it's one of the best women's books I've ever read. And he had a very well integrated feminine aspect, is what he had. And he was very smart. So I could talk to him about archetypes. I could talk to him. In fact, probably the secret, I asked him one time, I said, so what is it about me that you find so fascinating? And so he said, because you're like Scheherazade, you start one story, he said, and then you leave me waiting for the next story, he said. And he said, that's how the Arabian Nights happened, 1001 Nights. But as far as what you were saying about that, he felt that it was, his favorite was the King Arthur and knights and stuff like that. And with his skills, he felt like it was his purpose, if you would, to expose the darkness, because it was easy. He had said, and a writer has to be able to do that, because in our day now that we've made all crime because of psychology and eccentricity or a neurosis. He said, and there is evil in the world. He said, and it takes the writer to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty evil. But even things like, I think about swimming with the fishes and going to the mattresses and Luca Brasi, and like the depth of his, well, obviously, I mean, it was so real. Like, it was just so real for a person who really knew nothing about that life. It
He was
felt
45 years old before he wrote The Godfather. He wanted to be a literary man, and he said finally he realized he had to feed his family and stuff like that. And he said, that's when I came upon my real gift as a storyteller.
quite
And yeah.
But Carol, you've also written, like we said, many books, and you worked on a book with him at the end, right? That you finished?
Yeah, I mean, I finished his book called The Family, which was a book about the Borgias. Oh, you would love this. I said to him, I didn't know a lot of history. I went to Catholic school. They don't teach a lot of history. But what happened was we were talking about Lucretia Borgia one day, and he said, I said, oh my God, she was such a witch, wasn't she? She killed people, she slept with her brother, she did all these kind of things. And he said, no, he says, Carol, he said, Lucretia wasn't a bad girl. She was a good girl, just out of her time. He said, and she was put in a terrible position. He said, she was a good girl. And I thought to myself, anybody who thinks Lucretia Borgia is a good girl, I could hang out with them. I mean, what could I do? You know, but yeah, I finished that 2 weeks before he died. He went into his bottom drawer. You know, I used to read all his stuff and sort of edit it, you know, and say to him, what do you mean by this? And why did they do this? And like in one of his later books, he had one of the daughters being one of the heads and her brother said something to her and she cried. And I said, what girl would cry and she's a head of a whole bank institute and stuff? And he said, why, what would she do? I said, she'd say, fuck you, sorry, and do her own thing. And so he said, oh, okay. And so he would take some of the stuff I said, but we had been working on that book, talking about it anyhow, for a good 15 years because his lawyer his lawyer was a big historian, and he loved the Medicis and the Borgias because he said the popes were the first dons, and they were the greatest dons of all. And he was always afraid to move away from his genre at that time because it's like Coke making jeans. You know, it doesn't travel well. He tried a couple of other books that were really good, like The Fourth K was a book about America's arrogance and winding up with a fascist president. And they buried that book that quick because it just it didn't have any legs because it wasn't his genre, you know. And so I think that 2 weeks before he died, he pulled out the manuscript and he gave it to me and he said, I want you to finish this. And he had always said that he would never collaborate until after he was dead. And so I knew what he was saying. And I said, I can't do it. And he said, I've taught you all I know, you can do it. He said, do it for me. And I said, okay. And that's what happened. In fact, this you'll love. Girls, you will love this. When he was sick, the only thing we used to listen to all the time was we used to listen to Andrea Bocelli sing, you know, because he used to help the pain in his legs and stuff like that. He had neuropathy and stuff. And we would sit after we both worked and we would listen to Andrea sing. And I said to him, hey, you know what? If he ever comes in concert, I would love to see him. And he said to me, I thought you hated concerts. I said, I know, but I love him. I love his courage. I love his purpose. I love that he doesn't fall into the orchestra when he's playing, even though he can't see. It's trusting God. He rides a horse into the water. I just love him. He said, okay, I promise you. He said, if ever I have no pain and I can hear well again and see well again, I will take you to that concert. Okay. The day I was on the Today Show, Ann Curry was interviewing me for The Family once I finished the book and The Family came out. And the reason I didn't put Mario Puzo and Gino is because I wanted it to say completed by, so he didn't have to have a partner, so he didn't have to have a collaboration with them. So I was on the Today Show and it was just before my interview. And what happened is I was standing in the kitchen so I could see the stage because Destiny's Child was supposed to be on. I took my daughter in with me and they sent a limo and stuff. And so I went up and I was having tea and I was looking out the window and it was right on the stage. At the last minute, the producer came in and she said, I'm sorry, Destiny's Child isn't going to be on. She said, we have Andrea Bocelli today. And so
I knew that was coming. I knew
Yeah,
that was coming.
I
That's
was-
fantastic.
I was looking out the window. I had front row seats, and it was Andrea Bocelli.
That's beautiful.
So I did the
love that.
interview, and I'm crying on the interview,
Yeah,
right?
right.
While she's interviewing me, right? Oh,
That's
oh.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Carol, if people want to contact you, I know that you are doing one-on-ones. You're involved in so many different things. Perhaps you're writing another book. Can
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Can you?
This one, yeah. CarolGino.com. You can get me admin at CarolGino.com. Check out my website because I have a lot of stuff going on. But I have decided that it is really important now, before they start making us artificial, that women start to tell their stories. There are no ordinary lives. We are all so special. And hey, if God gives us breath, man, our stories are worth something. And most of our history has been written by men. Let's tell our stories. Let's be the women who write on the doors, on the walls of the cave. So historically, when they look back, they hear our voices. Let's give voice to the voiceless, because it really is time, you know.
And
Yeah,
Carol,
CarolGino.com, and I'm starting something called, a group called, I'd love if you join this, because I'm building it out to a virtual campus. It's called Soul Star Academy on Facebook. And I'm going to have places, buildings, virtual buildings for us to do everything.
if someone has something else to ask, or if you'd like to add something that we can edit back in. So, Alicia, did you have any other questions that weren't asked?
I just love how Carol is just so open with everything. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
Up next, favorite things. Opening up to happiness and joy.
Welcome, everybody, to Favorite Things portion of Grateful Goddesses. It's like an adult show and tell. So I'll start. In our hallway up towards the office, we have a whole bunch of photos, and they're old photos of family members, some who have passed on, some who are still here. This is my mom when she was little, and this is my dad when he was younger. And I just love these because there aren't many photos of them when they're younger. And they look a lot like my kids when they were younger, which is really cool to see. Especially my mom's nose is just like my daughter's nose, and my son looks just like my dad when he was younger. So I just love old photos. And I do ask the ones who have passed, whenever I walk up to the office, I say hi and I say, how are you? And what message do you want to send me? I don't always get an answer. Maybe I need to just surrender a little bit or listen to the ringing and ask what that is. But I do welcome and say hi to them. So that's really nice for me. And it's one of my favorite. Rachel, what did you bring today?
I have these beautiful hand woven bags. I have this one and I have this one. And they were woven by my husband's brother, who lives in a community called Camp Hill Sultane, and they have a store called Entwine where you can buy things that they make candles, and they make clothing, and they make bags, and it supports their community. So I bought things in the past, but just the other day, my husband's like, we really need to remember Entwine when we're giving gifts to people to support the community. And and we talk about this on Grateful Goddesses all the time. We love to give gifts. And so it was just a really nice reminder, but I carry these bags all the time. So, and I'm wearing my new bracelet. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. It was Rachel's birthday. Good on you, Rachel.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Michelle, what did you bring?
Well, that's funny because speaking about birthday presents, Karen, I think you know what I'm going to show.
Oh, yeah.
I got these incredibly beautiful and like incredibly smelling roses for my birthday from my dear friend Karen, or our dear friend Karen. And I've never seen anything like this. They're supposed to last for, I guess, up to a year.
A year.
I wish you could smell them. I'm telling you, phenomenal. And there's a little drawer that you can put things in if you want. I just leave it on my desk. I love flowers. This last year, I've been just wanting to surround myself by flowers. And Karen, like, of course, thank you so much. I just love them. So.
Well, I wanted to send you flowers each month because you deserve to have flowers. We all deserve to have flowers all the time. But I decided, I looked up flowers that last a year, which I didn't think there was such a thing. I just plugged it in.
Look that up.
And it came up, and I guess they're preserved. I guess it's like when you preserve a dead person. I don't know, but they preserved them.
Well, they don't smell like formaldehyde. So that's good.
I don't know how yeah. So I'm so glad they look really pretty. I'm so glad
they just smell like you guys can't even imagine. Delicious.
Alyssa, what did you bring?
Those are beautiful, by the way. I always love having flowers when I can behind me. In light of our conversation about The Godfather in particular, I'm going to plug a series that I just loved and finally made it through the first 5 seasons. And it's called Peaky Blinders. It's on Netflix. It is first of all, it's incredibly, the actors are incredible and the story is really cool. But what it is, it takes place back in sort of post-World War I. We sort of move into the 20s. And it's really about an Irish mob family and their sort of battles with other gangs. The actually Italian New York mafia make an appearance for quite a while in one of the seasons, and I was reminded of that in this conversation today. But I love it. It does take a little bit of time for me to start to understand some of the very thick accents, so subtitles are recommended when watching. But I really think it's great. It's sort of a really interesting, almost sort of slice of history. They're in England, but they're an Irish family, a gypsy Irish family back in the 20s. So really cool. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I do need another show for sure. So another one of my favorite podcasts is That's Myrony with Alicia, and she's here as one of the featured goddesses. So what did you bring to share today?
Oh, well, thank you for that, Karen. But it's behind me right here, which this is really crazy because, part of my story, Carol, as you know, we got to be authentic and we just have to share, right? So I just publicly went on my friend's podcast, Sense of Soul, and I told about my spiritual experience. Literally, it came out on 2/22. And I had this experience where I don't know how to explain it, but I seriously spent 24 hours with God. And, whatever you want to call God. But I bought this little sign literally 3 days before. I intuitively bought it with a whole bunch of other items. And it says, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And it's just kind of funny because I put this up, I moved to a new place, I just put it up and I was like, oh, my background, because usually it's a little bit different. So I thought that was just perfect as my favorite thing for today.
I love it. I was wondering what it said. I kept looking. I see smile. I was wondering. Thanks for sharing that, for being here today, Alicia.
Oh,
Carol.
Oh,
drum roll, Carol. What did you bring?
Right. You're going to laugh because I have so much stuff that I could say are my favorite things because I'm like obsessive. But I'm also Italian. And the thing I love next to writing is cooking. And this is the best thing that you will ever buy in your whole life. It is $39 on Amazon. It is a Cuisinart chop and grind. It's light, and you never have to, this is how I make shrimp salad or chicken salad. Chop it all up. I take an onion, I take celery, I take chicken or shrimp, mayonnaise, an onion, and just throw it all there and turn it on. And then it's done.
I hate to say this, but something's coming in and saying, just don't stick your hand in there. Could that be Mario? I don't know.
What? Who even knows? I mean, for all I know.
Don't chop and grind body parts.
It's so good. It is so good.
No,
It's
that's
perfect.
awesome. We definitely will try that. And thank you so much again for coming on Grateful Goddesses and
Thank
sharing
you
your time
all.
with us.
And tell your stories. Tell your stories.
Tell your stories.
Nobody is living an ordinary life. There is no ordinary. We're all unique. Tell your story.
Thank you, Carol.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.